17, again, we're going to entertain a motion or a amendment in a moment. Article 17 is titled North Pond Project. I'll read the motion to see if the town will vote to appropriate and transfer the sum of $1 million from the undesignated CPC fund for the acquisition of said property. Said funds to be expended by the Conservation Commission and the Community Preservation Committee. And to authorize the Conservation Commission and the Select Board to submit on behalf of the town and any and all applications deemed necessary for grants and or reimbursements from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts under the Local Acquisitions for Natural Diversity Program and its specified chapter and section, and or any other state or federal programs, including those in aid of conservation land acquisition, and or any others in any way connected with the scope of this article, and to enter into any necessary contracts therefore, and to authorize the Select Board to grant a perpetual conservation restriction on said parcel of land meeting the requirements of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44B, as may be deemed appropriate, and any other statutory provisions related to the same, and to enter into all agreements and execute any and all instruments as may be necessary on behalf of the town to effectuate said purchase, all subject to approval of town council as requested by the Community Preservation Committee. And again, for sake of discussion and entertaining the amendment, what is the Finance Committee recommendation?
The Finance Committee does not recommend Article 17.
Okay, do I have a motion on Article 17?
So moved.
And a second? Motion made and seconded. Now, who's doing the amendment? Okay, I'm going to recognize Dennis Clark again. Ally, can we get the microphone?
Dennis Clark, 75 Fred Jackson Road. I do hereby make a motion to amend Article 17 for the purpose of designating the accounts from which the total appropriation will be made. For some reason, the accounts and the dollar amounts did not get into the article, so second paragraph to read as follows. And that to purchase said funds to appropriate and transfer $280,039 from the Community Preservation Open Space Reserve account and $719,961 from the Community Preservation General and Reserve Fund for a total appropriation of $1 million for the acquisition of said property, said funds to be expended by the Conservation Commission and the Community Preservation Committee. And further to amend the first paragraph of the motion section of Article 17 consistent with the amendment to the second paragraph as follows. Motion to see if the town will vote to appropriate and transfer $280,039 from the Community Preservation Open Space Reserve account and $719,961 from the Community Preservation General Unreserved Funds for a total appropriation of $1 million for the acquisition of said property, said funds to be expended by the Conservation Commission and the Community Preservation Committee. The remaining language of Article 17 in the motion selection of Article 17 remains unchanged.
Do I hear a second to the amendment? Okay, motion made and seconded. I'm going to rule it a proper amendment. It's well within the scope of the original article as published in the Warwick. Basically, the proposed purchase of the real estate isn't changing, so the intent is unchanged, and the total amount has not changed. The manner in which it's being funded is being more specifically enumerated. And so it is a proper amendment, and open it up for discussion. Are there any questions about the amendment? Any questions or comments about the amendment before we vote on it? So, yep.
Bob Rochek, 21 Great Brook Drive. Dennis, what will be left in the accounts that you mentioned in the motion? What will be left in those accounts?
What will be the balance
What will be
after
the
the
balance?
expenditure?
John Wally, Chairman. About $150,000 in the general unreserved and nothing in open space until we get our new amounts of money for 2018.
So this drains the first account and almost drains the general reserve fund.
If you call 150,000, right?
Other discussion on the amendment? So, again, I'm not going to read it back to you. I think it's more of a technical amendment to specify exactly where the funding comes from than it is the substance of it. We're going to get the vote on the main motion in a few minutes after discussion on that. So all in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. And those opposed say no. So the amendment is unanimously passed. And now we're open for discussion under Article 17 as amended. And would representatives of the CPC or the Conservation Commission like to speak to the proposal? You don't have to, okay?
Hi, Christopher Pratt, Chair of Southwest Conservation Commission, 152 Berkshire Ave. We are extremely in favor of this project. Using open space funds from the CPC is, I think, why we voted this in as a town in the first place, so that we can preserve the aesthetics and the rural feel that we have for the town. Also, so that we can have it for public use. If this was denied, the land would not be for public use. It would still be as a private parcel, even though it may not ever get developed. This would open it up to public use. We'd have trails and access to the lake from that end of the pond. It would also provide contiguous land from the state acreage from wildlife, for the wildlife, all the way to the lake, the grasslands and forest to the lake. So we would have some great connectivity.
Okay, I'm going to open it up for, Mr. Phelps here first. Ally, if you recall, right over here.
Marcus Phelps, 28 Depot Street, elected member of the Planning Board and a representative from the Planning Board to the Community Preservation Committee. As was already mentioned in Article 15 that was passed, we are projecting money coming in from the town surcharge on the taxes plus the state funding, which total about $425,000 for fiscal year 2018. And of that, I would estimate about $325,000 will be available for open space and the unreserved account. And adding $150,000, which is the balance, we would have about $475,000 available for new projects. The Community Preservation Committee has a continuous application process. So we do, when we meet, consider any applications that have been submitted. And we did consider this one from the Franklin Land Trust, and the committee voted to recommend that the town meeting spend $1 million for this property. It's a very important piece of property. It's the last remaining lakefront property on North Pond that's undeveloped. And the key word we want to keep in our minds is water. It's an excellent, excellent resource for water, which in the next 20 or 25 years, from a planning standpoint, is going to be critical. It's going to be a limiting factor for many communities. And thankfully, South Lake is blessed with a good water supply, and we need to keep it safe.
Ally, and then have you run back up to the middle of the room there.
It's my exercise for the day.
Deborah Herring, Free Shore Road. I am the president of Citizens Restoring Hopalong. We are a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to help preserve and protect the health of the lakes. Our membership recently voted to support the purchase of the North Pond Lake. We have donated $3,000, which is more than our yearly membership fees, to this project. And a new member donated another $1,000 because we all feel strongly that our lakes need to be healthy and clean, and putting more buildings up there, if we do not purchase this property, would only degrade the lakes. And if there's any, if there were to be, if we did not purchase it and a developer purchased it, there would be, the health of the lakes would deteriorate due to lawns of very expensive houses, the chemicals. There's no sewers planned for that area in the foreseeable future. And CRC and its membership feels very strongly that we should support this project. Thank you.
Oh, so other discussion, maybe down front here, yeah. Always got the microphone for you.
Laura Zides, 19 North Pond Road, Southwick. My husband and I live on North Pond, and you're going to say, oh, well, they live, of course we're going to vote for it. Not necessarily, yes, we are voting for it. Because we're not selfish. Shame on the selectmen.
That's a finance.
Let's get to your point, Leon.
Please. On good days, during the nice weather, there are a minimum of 54 pontoon boats that just pull up over there, and they're all families. And you hear the kids jumping in the water. So 54, and say there's about 4 on each boat or whatever, you're looking at over 300 Southwickians having fun. Not only that, since the tunnels have opened up, that brought the traffic to us. Traffic's not so great, but it's great for the people. It's great for the kids. And to take that away and have condos built or whatever is going to do more wear and tear on the roads, more teachers, bigger schools. You just don't wear blinders. North Pond, the water is spring fed. You know what it's like to go in and you can feel fresh water coming up from the ground, and you want to destroy this? I don't think that's very intelligent, especially for the future. I hope that all of you are like George and I, and not just thinking of yourselves or being narrow-minded. We don't. Think of people, think of youth today that enjoy it, and when they have kids and they tell their kids, this is what I used to do too when I was young.
Okay, this man's over, this side of the road, back here, Chris.
I just got a couple things. I'd like to commend the CPC and especially John Waller. I know he's done a really great job in preserving the open space in Southwick. And I think this is one project that definitely deserves backing and support. Speaking of the lake, I grew up on the lake. I'm 55 years old now. And when I was a little kid, growing up on Middletown, which runs the length of Berkshire Avenue, there was not even half the houses you see on the lake now that we do now. And it used to be so much more of a pleasant experience to go swimming down there. And in fact, Middle Pond too is spring fed, whether you know that or not, because I've swum off one of the Congamon Heights Association beaches, and you can feel the nice cold spring water coming up in there as well. And the only thing that I wanted to say about designating the entire $1 million cash. I do notice that the finance committee recommended against it, and I don't want to poo-poo that recommendation entirely. And I was just wondering, as a point of inquiry, do you have to designate the entire $1 million towards this project? Or is there a way to, I mean, and I'd like to see it done, and I know the town has done a lot of fundraisers and everything, but should we designate the entire fund? That's my only question. But if it is the only way to do it, and if it's the only way that can be done, I would definitely go for it, because I think it's a grand idea. And to reserve that open space, that's something that over the years, I guess, we've somewhat moved to do in this town. We've restricted some development. I think it's a great idea. And keep up the good work over there.
So I'm going to recognize Mr. Wally, and then I am going to recognize.
I would just like to withdraw the condemnation of everyone on stage. Let's do that after the vote.
Representative of the Finance Committee, I'm going to recognize somebody, I think it's appropriate to provide an explanation.
About Project 21 Great Brook Drive. Just to answer your question about the $1 million, do we need the whole $1 million? I think, Mr. Wall, I can corroborate this. We're about 1.8 million short. I think we have about 1.6 or something from the Commonwealth. That's added to this million plus some other grants. So I think we're at about 3.25. The two appraisals came in at 4.9 and 5 million respectively. Those are best case appraisals. So in other words, they didn't take into consideration any conservation restrictions, any perk test, or anything relative to what the real value of the land is. It just was, in a perfect world, this is what the value of the land was. And the 4.9 million had like 85 house lots, and the second one had 43 house lots.
Well, for the town to go forward.
Wait, sir, I will recognize you again, but we're going to maintain some decorum here. So let's get the microphone back up to Chris. Follow up there, and then I'll recognize Dennis.
No, I was just curious as to whether or not it's like use or lose. Do we have to commit to the $1 million right now to go forward with it?
Okay, so I'm going to recognize Dennis for the answer to that question.
Very good question. Yes, we lose it if we don't appropriate the $1 million tonight. We'll lose the project. It's a $5 million project with 3 appraisals. They all came in either over or at 5 or just a little below. So it is a legitimate price. It's in by approved appraisers. And yes, if we don't vote on it tonight, we will lose the project.
And I agree with you guys. Why do we set
Thank you for asking.
Why do we set the money aside?
Okay, let's continue the discussion with other people. Mike McMahon.
30
And
Lauren.
then Andrea, I'll do you next.
Michael McMahon, 30 Lauren Lane. I do not live on the lakes, I do not own a boat, and I have no relatives who live on the lake. But I think if you look at this document, which is, it's on the town website, and it was on the table here tonight, it's the pros and cons from the finance committee. If you go to this article, Article 17, it talks about during a recent school feasibility study done by an independent nonprofit organization, the report showed that there were no significant building projects in Southwick, Randall, or Talon. Hence, unlike what the proponents of the North Pond project would lead you to believe, there are no developments even being looked at by the planning board, so that the supposed danger of the property being developed seems remote. Now my comment. This is what we're doing there. Obviously, by looking at a report which was commissioned by the school committee, the report was bogus to start with. So now if you actually look at reality, if you spoke to the town planner or if you spoke to any member of the planning board, they would tell you that currently there is a project under construction behind Big Y to build 26 houses That in itself is a significant project. And if you go on Realtor.com, they're selling those lots for $119,000 or more on each lot before you build anything on them. So the reality is, there is development going on in town. If you go up around the ranch golf course, there are $600,000 to $800,000 houses being built. They're actually being built, and they're actually selling. How people want to vote on this issue is up to them, but by handing out to the public statements that talk about there is no development and there are no plans is simply incorrect or worse, intentionally falsifying. So,
Okay.
Andrea Scully, on Castle Street in Southwick. We had an opportunity as a town to buy the same parcel of land when King, who owned it originally, was willing to sell it. The town voted it down. It was a much lower price. We now have an opportunity, which may have never come again, to purchase this land. Many of you don't remember the first lake cleanup that was sponsored by the Citizens Restoring Congamon, the Lake Management Group. But that cleanup, before that cleanup, the businesses were going out, property values were down. The lake part of the town was considered the bad side of the tracks. You just heard what some of the houses are going for. It's not the wrong side of the tracks anymore. People are saying, well, if you built houses there, it would help the taxes. No, because water, as stated earlier, is a more important resource than oil, gas, or coal at this point in time. And if you put that many houses with what people have been talking about, you're going to ruin. You're going to pollute the lake. You're going to ruin our aquifer, which is the water supply for at least 3 towns. And what's going to happen to the property values and your tax structure? Not to buy this is a great mistake.
Other discussion? Point of order back there? Call a question. Okay, who's doing that? Okay, would you rise and please say, I move the question?
Marcus Phelps.
No, Marcus, I recognize this gentleman back here to move the question. And I can't,
make a motion to move.
yes, okay, is there a second to move the question? Okay, so the vote is to cut off debate and go to a vote on the Article 15, and I have to honor that motion. All right, 17. Whatever it is, we're going to cut off debate if this gentleman's motion passes. It requires a 2/3 vote, so all in favor of moving the question, cutting off debate at this time, please say aye. Aye. And those opposed say no. And I'm going to declare that a 2/3 majority. Does anybody challenge my finding? We are proceeding by standard town meeting procedure here, and this is proper. You have moved the question. At this time, I'm going to call a vote on Article 17 as amended. It requires a majority vote because we're appropriating money from the CPC accounts. So we will try it by voice first and then count if we need to later. All in favor of Article 17 as amended, please say aye. Aye. And those opposed say no.
No.
It is a majority vote. Would anybody, if you'd like to see a counted vote, please raise your hand. Everybody comfortable with the vote? It's a majority vote, and I heard more than sufficient to call it a majority. Okay? So we'll move ahead to Article 18.